Lots of Ravens fans want it, so let's talk about it. Should the Ravens trade back out of the first round to get more picks later in the draft? What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to TTB Ravens Media. Bring you Ravens content every single day. If you want to see that daily Ravens content, make sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell as well if you want to get notified every single time I upload a brand new video. In this video today, I'm going to be talking essentially first round draft strategy. Should the Baltimore Ravens try and trade back in the draft? Obviously, you do that to acquire more assets, and sometimes the guy that you want, you know he'll be available early second round. So let's talk about the pros and cons. So first off, when I say this, you're never going to trade back until you get to your selection, right? And you're not going to trade back if a star player is there, right? This is not a situation. If I end up saying like, yeah, the Ravens should trade back, you know, if Jared Verse falls to you at 30, you're not trading back, right? If maybe you really want Kool-Aid, or maybe you want Brian Thomas Jr. or A.D. Mitchell, or like me, Keon Coleman. Like, obviously, if they're available, Amarius Mims, whatever tackle you want, if they're available, like, yeah, you're not going to trade back and hope that they stay there. But let's say all of those players are gone, right? And you're sitting at 30, and you feel like maybe a Jordan Morgan, or Xavier Legette, or Xavier Worthy, or Chop Robinson, Darius Robinson, Kingsley Sumataya, Karen Amagagie, whoever you want, you're like, this guy's not going to go in the next 5 picks. So you listen to the calls and hear from teams like the Panthers. You hear from teams like the Giants, the Patriots, the Commanders, because maybe they are looking for a wide receiver or a tackle, or I should name positions that the Ravens aren't looking for, so it makes more sense. Maybe they're looking for a quarterback, right? And they want that 5th-year option on Michael Penix or Bo Nix or Spencer Rattler, whatever it may be. And the Ravens are like, we don't want that. Should the Ravens listen to the offer and trade back? I say no. Unless you're trading back significantly. Okay? I don't think it makes sense to trade back from pick 30 to pick 34. I think that is a terrible decision if the Baltimore Ravens ended up doing that, unless they got a massive haul. And the reason why I say that is because of how much I value the 5th-year option on rookie players. And that's only available to players drafted in the first round. And we've already seen multiple times in the last 5 years under Eric DeCosta how valuable that can be, right? Lamar Jackson, 5th-year option picked up, right? So now you get to wait 1 more year on paying him. Yeah, the 5th-year option, you pay them a lot more than you did in the first 4 years, but it's still less. If they are a player that is elite and top dollar, you're going to be paying a lot less on that 5th year than you would be if you don't have that 5th year. And you would have to franchise tag them most likely, or obviously sign them to a contract extension. But I mean, if you're looking at this Ravens roster right now and the big decisions, right? We're going to have Kyle Hamilton, 5th-year option. We're going to have a Tyler Linderbaum, 5th-year option. Right? The Ravens are deciding, do they want Adafe? Do they want Rashad Bateman 5th-year options? Obviously, Zay Flowers. That's huge because you want them to turn into your star players. That's what your first pick, you want them to become a star player. Not all of them are going to become star players. You're happy if they're just contributing players. That's still a fine pick. But the hope is they become a star player and you accept that 5th-year option. Otherwise, you get to situations where maybe the best player from a draft class wasn't a first round pick. Exhibit Justin Madubuike. With Justin Madubuike, the Ravens had to extend him or franchise tag him. Luckily, they were able to get that contract extension done without having to, truly utilize the franchise tag. I believe they did technically place it, but he signed the contract extension very quickly, so it didn't necessarily matter. But imagine if we had that 5th-year option on Justin Madubuike, right? And at the positions that the Ravens are drafting, these are high priority positions, right? First round pick is most likely going to be one of 4 positions: wide receiver, offensive tackle, corner, or pass rusher, right? All of those positions get a ton of money. So if they end up being an all-pro, in their first 4 years of their career, or a Pro Bowler, like we've seen from Kyle Hamilton and Tyler Linderbaum and Lamar Jackson was, being able to say that even Patrick Queen was an all-pro during his rookie contract, being able to maintain them and keep them on their roster is incredibly valuable. And I think that 5th year for, let's say the Ravens are drafting and they want to take Jordan Morgan, right? And they feel like, hey, he might be available at 36, 37, 38. Would you rather get, right? Like, if you're going to trade back that far, you're probably going to want a 2nd round pick in return. And the best example I can give of that is what did the Ravens trade the last time they traded into the 1st round to take pick 32? The Ravens sent the 52nd pick. They sent the 125th pick and their next year's 2nd pick in order to take Lamar Jackson, and got back the 132nd pick. So they moved up slightly, or moved back slightly, in the 125th pick is about 4th round area. Maybe it was a comp pick, 3rd round situation, but you move back 7 spots later in the draft, and you trade this year's 2nd and your next year's 2nd to move up and take him. So obviously if a team offers you, right, and you're getting a large haul, yes. But most of the time, the offers that I see people accepting for these trade backs is like a 5th round pick, and you move back 5 spots. And that makes sense in the sense of, if you are moving from, 26 to 31, yeah, right? Like if the Ravens want to trade back to 32, that's fine, right? Grab an extra 6th round pick or a future 5th. That's totally fine. That's doable. I don't mind that. It's this idea that, like, you just need to get all the picks imaginable, when in reality, I think the most valuable thing that you can have with rookies is not quantity of rookies, but versatility and control over those rookies' future in the organization. And how do you have control? You have control with that 5th year option, because it helps in the trade market. So if you need to trade that player, the other team now has that 5th year option. It helps if you want to keep them for a 5th year. And it also gives your team a very good time frame to assess whether or not you want to keep them long term. That's exactly what we did with Patrick Queen, right? We watched Patrick Queen and we were like, okay, what do we want to do with Patrick Queen? And instead of saying, hey, we want to rock with this guy, the Ravens looked at it and said, why don't we get our linebacker? And he can play with Patrick Queen for a little bit, but we'll eventually move on from him. And they decided early, not early necessarily, like 3.5 years in, they decided, let's get Roquan Smith. And we'll get to keep, Patrick Queen for 1.5 years with Roquan Smith. And if it really works well, we could try and re-sign him. But in reality, they were never going to re-sign Patrick Queen, because they made the decision that, hey, we're not going to take the 5th year option. We're going to pay somebody else. And we were able to trade for him. When you don't have that 5th year option, that luxury, you're forced into those decisions of keeping someone much earlier, right? So rather than year 3.5, you might be looking at year 2.5, where you're like, hey, we gotta, are we keeping this guy? And you may not have given the player the proper time to adjust, and you may make the wrong decision. Also, the Ravens have a lot of draft picks this year, right? That's the other aspect that I look at with this, is it's not a situation like the Chicago Bears. I think have 3 or 4 draft picks, right? They have 1st, they have 9th, they have like a 4th or something like that. They might have a 3rd, but really they don't have very many draft picks. So if they're trading back because they want to acquire depth and they need to gather more assets, that makes sense. But when I'm looking at this Baltimore Ravens roster, I'm not looking at it like we need to fill 7 holes and we only have, 6 draft picks. How many holes do the Ravens have? 2? Like starting wide receiver and tackle? And tackle and guard might be filled by players we already have on the roster. It's not like it's a complete vacancy where we have nobody that can play there. The Ravens are patching, right? They're not filling. They're just patching things. They're just trying to improve. And you improve by getting the best players available. So for me in particular, I'm anti-trade back. I think I'm more trade forward. And that's not trade forward in the first. That's not, hey, let's acquire 2 first-round picks. That's, you're sitting there in the second and you get to pick 50. And you're like, hey, Xavier Legette's still available. Keon Coleman's still available. Or, Jordan Morgan fell a little bit. Tyler Guyton's available. Maybe we package, a 4th rounder and our 2nd rounder and move up 15, 20 spots in the 2nd round and get someone else that, maybe we valued as a, first round player. Because again, I don't think the Ravens are in a spot where they are going to be able to have, 8, 9 rookies. Look at last year. We had to trade or cut Caillou Blue Kelly, because we didn't have enough spots. The last time the Ravens had a ton of draft picks, we had to trade Shaun Wade prior to cuts because we were we have too many players. So, yes, the Ravens are looking at all of these positions and they're looking at these draft picks. But in reality, the Ravens don't have that many open roster spots that are just going to be able to be filled by rookies. They have good vets. So I think what the Ravens need more than more draft picks later in the draft, I think what they need is better quality rookies. So I'm actually going to kind of flip this video on its head and be like, I don't want to trade back in the first round unless it's trading back. You trade back 1 spot, you trade back 2 spots, whatever. I'm not upset about that. Acquire a 6th in addition to that, whatever. I'm not opposed to that, but don't trade back into the 2nd. But if the Ravens want to trade up in the 3rd or trade up in the 2nd and get, a little bit earlier, and they just trade some of their later draft picks this year, that's the type of stuff that I'm looking for. Because if a guy starts sliding, I want the Ravens to be aggressive and target the players that they really feel fit their system so that they're not in a situation where they're like, okay, maybe we should trade back. Because I don't think trading back necessarily helps the Ravens very much unless they are getting a lot, or maybe it's a situation where they're getting a player, right? If a team, if you look at what the Ravens did with Hollywood Brown, right? They traded Hollywood and they, acquired the pick that was then traded back, and we got Tyler Linderbaum. But if the Ravens were in a situation and someone offered a player and they're like, hey, we want to, we want your first round pick, we got, pick 40, but we'll package player A with that. And it's like, okay, now at least you're acquiring a capable starter and make sure it's not a bad player. That's definitely something more that I would be willing to do. But again, that wouldn't be my favorite. I really like the spot the Ravens have. There's a lot of great corners, a lot of great wide receivers, a lot of great tackles, all positions the Ravens can use. Let's grab one early and maybe even try and package some picks, move up in the 2nd or move up in the 3rd and get another one. Thank you all so much for watching. Subscribe for more Daily Ravens content. Let me know your thoughts on that take, and I'll see all of you again tomorrow.